Yes, he did.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
I'm not kidding. 2 days ago, I said, man, we need a big story to talk about. We got some good stuff, but what are we going to really kick it off with? Well, we got a little something. Welcome to Donnybrook. I'm sitting in for Charlie Brennan for the last week. He'll be back next week, and next week is Donnie Bash. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. So thank you for joining us tonight. And we'll kick it off with Wendy Wiese from KTRS, a founder, Bill McClellan, St. Louis Post-Dispatch, tremendous columnist, I must say. Another founder, Ray Hartmann, another tremendous columnist, rawstory.com, KTRS. You'll be working tonight?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. And in my seat, Sarah Fenske, for a short time from St. Louis Public Radio. Sarah, what's going on? Where are you going?
I'm going to Euclid Media. I'm looking forward to being Ray's boss's boss.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
They need one of those.
They are a growing newspaper company, and they have the Riverfront Times here in St. Louis, among a half dozen others, and I'm going to be running the editorial side of their operation. So.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome back to where you belong, which is print. All right.
I kind of feel that way.
Yeah, right. I'm sure you'll miss the big, gigantic billboards all over town.
Oh,
but,
that's right.
They've promised me billboards for this new print.
Oh, did they? All right.
That's great.
There we go. Well, big news happening this morning. Now, on May 25th, indictments handed down to President of the Board of Aldermen Louis Reid, Alderman Jeffrey Boyd, and former Alderman John Collins Muhammad, who resigned, hinted that something big was coming down the pipeline. What it is federal bribery charges. 3 for Collins Muhammad, 2 for the other 2 gentlemen. Where are we at, Ray? I mean, this is the biggest, St. Louis political scandal, going back to Sorgus Webby and the gang on the cable, deal. Sorgus Webby went to prison, but only 1 alderman did. We've got a former alderman, a current alderman, and Louis Reid, president of the board of aldermen, who, quite frankly, I think should resign immediately. But okay, here we are into it. What's up?
Well, I spoke to Louis Reid today at Donnybrook News. We have if it's news to us. No, Louis Reid I did talk to. He has pled not guilty. He maintains his innocence, has said that he does not intend to resign, and that he will mount, in his words, a vigorous defense. So that's what Louis is saying. I don't agree with you that he should resign necessarily. I mean, he can if he wants. I'm not saying that's his decision. I don't believe that when somebody is indicted that they aren't entitled to their presumption of innocence, and he's got to do what he's got to do.
Right, I'm with you on the presumption of innocence, but he presides over the Board of Aldermen. They're planning to meet tomorrow morning. He's planning to preside over that meeting. And if you read this indictment, they clearly have someone on a wire. There's cash being handed off. What legislation gets through and what favors people get from the city is all dependent on who can get thousands of dollars in cash behind the scenes. How can we have this person running the Board of Aldermen knowing the evidence that's in this indictment?
Well, let me say that when you resign, you want to get something for it.
Exactly.
I mean, so that's still a little chip you have. So if I was Louis Reid, I would think, I'll give that to the U.S. attorney when I change my plea. I mean, these things are very difficult to fight when you're on a wire. Taking money and talking about taking money, and some of it's heartbreaking. Like Jeffrey Boyd, having his car fixed free for $573. And you think, oh, Jeffrey, I mean, it'd be easier to understand if this was big money going around. But for the most part, it wasn't.
And that's a wise person actually said earlier today that it is kind of stunning what small payouts will end a large career or a promising career. And that is exactly what everybody must have been thinking when they read the transcripts.
You know what struck me, though? I mean, this is just one guy in this indictment, this John Doe, the guy that was going around giving cash to these 3 different men, giving cars, fixing cars. This all happened so smoothly and easily. It didn't seem like there was a lot of internal debate about whether or not one was doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You got the sense this had been something that had done before. They just got the one guy with the wire. And so these are small amounts of money for this one person. What is happening behind the scenes at St. Louis City Hall?
Well, I think it's business as usual. You know, I mean, when John Collins Muhammad was telling the businessman, you know, the businessman, thank you very much, knowing he's wearing a wire. And Muhammad was saying, well, we're here to help.
We're here to help
yeah,
small
we're supposed to help small businesses.
Small businesses.
I'm just
Like,
doing my
oh,
job.
God.
I thought, and you know, I mean, that's the outlook at City Hall.
Well, and it looks like, I guess we can't tell yet, but it looks like it was a sting, meaning it was somebody decided to set this up. And that does, and again, it does not speak to these folks, whether they're guilty or innocent, but it does raise a question as if you're going to the extent this is a widespread thing in government, how do you decide who you're putting the sting onto? In other words, who are you not doing with a sting? Because certainly there's a whole lot of folks in St. Louis City around the political class who make a lot more money than this off of maybe a legalized form of this, but the idea is, and I'm not, again, it has nothing to do with these guys. If they're innocent, they're guilty, and as Bill points out, even if they were planning to resign, they wouldn't do it until they had an opportunity to negotiate. But I will say this, it does raise a question as to how do you know, how do you decide who you do
who's
and don't?
Go?
No. Like Sarah said, no, they had an inkling that
maybe
these guys are taking payoffs. We have a situation where we can see if they're taking payoffs. And I don't think it's a coincidence that they went down to the ATM machine and withdrawing money and counting it out and all that. That means that, oh no, this kind of thing goes on all the time. And if you read, please, you go online, find the indictment, and read the conversations. Okay,
Yeah.
that's all I got to tell you.
Word for word.
Word for word.
Let me say one thing else. You know, I said it goes on at City Hall. We should make it clear that this is not everybody at City Hall.
Right.
And
No.
in fact, Mayor Tashara Jones, these are her enemies.
That's
I
right.
mean, Lewis Reed,
That's right.
Jeffrey Boyd. I'm not sure about.
So while she
Collins
Collins Muhammad or Collins Muhammad, but while we know she was diagnosed with COVID today, it probably wasn't in a total wash.
I would probably say.
I know that she's saddened and deeply disturbed, but as you said, these are
two of her strongest enemies.
And
when I said what I said, I'm not implying that anyone in particular, certainly not everyone would do this. I'm just saying, how do you decide? And you may be right. Maybe they had an inkling on this, but you could. It's just interesting, you know, how they decide to do. And again, it doesn't have the four corners of their case, which obviously, whenever the feds indict you and you've got this much out, don't look good.
No, right. And I don't think I'll ever go down there in my, you know, hey, lawyer, let's plead. Why me? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Why not somebody else?
Yeah. One last thing. That's like, well, everybody was speeding off.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
I'm giving you a ticket. One last thing. The 3 individuals indicted were the 3 strongest. I think Collins Muhammad's name is actually on the lawsuit against Proposition R, which love it, hate it, was about making people responsible for their decisions, i.e. trying to take some of the maybe dirt out of the politics. I think that effort has probably gone down the drain.
Those guys issued a release today, crowing, making clear that they had media availability and like, oh yes, you know, this is why we were pushing for these reforms.
I had not seen that yet. Okay, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah, well, they're kind of entitled to that, I guess.
For sure, they
absolutely.
earned that.
I think, you know, and once again, I think he should resign immediately. But okay, he doesn't. Should he preside over this meeting tomorrow morning at the Board of Aldermen? Seriously, he should go down there and lead a meeting at the Board of Aldermen.
What's he? I mean,
That's
he's
pretty
either,
difficult.
That's
he's if he's innocent until proven guilty and he doesn't resign, what is he?
I think he at least needs to go on leave. I get if he doesn't want to actually resign his post.
Exactly.
He should not be running those
He's going to hang on to that chip as long as he possibly
Right.
can.
But as Alvin says, how do you preside at a meeting?
All right.
All right.
Well, we'll
Valid
see.
point.
There will be protests tomorrow morning. I'm putting money on that.
I think some people will probably be down to city.
Some people will be there.
Right. I got to cover the race tomorrow or
Friends
some
up.
events, or else I'd be there. All right. Okay. Reverend Duvall. All right. He was on one of the committees.
Jail Advisory Board.
Jail Advisory Board. He went scorched earth. Okay. Now, Sam Page of the county says he really doesn't even live here anymore. I guess maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't. But he just said, like, hey, between neglect and between people being overworked and between the county executive's office not doing its job, he was fed up. I'm resigning. Sarah, I feel like it's some sour grapes on the way out the door.
I don't know. I mean, Reverend Duvall has had concerns about this advisory board almost the entire time he's been on it. He has talked about the fact that they have set things up to sweep issues under the rug rather than investigate them. He got into it to try to hold the jail accountable. We know that county jail had some big problems. He says he likes the guy who was brought in to run it. This guy, Scott Anders, came out of the federal system. He seems to be a good guy and a reformer. But Reverend Duvall says he's being held back by a cabal within the jail, that this jail advisory board is looking the other way, that they've kind of structured how they're going to look into some of these things so they can't get to the bottom of things. If that is indeed the case, he's made the right choice not to sanction it with his presence. I have to respect that.
I had him on the air, Reverend Duvall, and he specifically denies having left St. Louis.
St. Louis.
He says he has a house, votes here, and pays taxes here, but that he commutes to another state for work. But
And
that,
what's state, right? Oklahoma?
Oklahoma,
Oklahoma.
yeah, Oklahoma. And so I don't know. I mean, but I don't think that's really relevant anyway. I think that, and it doesn't, I don't think it was great of Sam Page's spokesperson to bring that out as if that was even relevant. I don't know. I think that in recent times, whether it was Troy Doyle or Doug Burris, who I got to meet and gave me a tour of the jail, who was really highly regarded, I think, there, and did a good job for a year. And the gentleman who succeeded,
Anders.
Anders, you know, I don't think they're the issue. I do think that the best point that, I thought he had one good line when I talked to him, which was that the county jail is pretty much like the city jails, except the locks work, you know, and that there's some common problems here. He suggested, and I think it's worth looking at, having a permanent oversight board with subpoena power rather than essentially having the jail investigate itself on some of these tough issues. I think whatever you think about his, and I don't know about the merit of his concerns, I think that's a pretty good idea. And you could actually argue that maybe a city-county board that was much like the major case squad combining resources to look at this problem with jails is so endemic in this area. I'm not sure it's not a good idea to have somebody to have some independent oversight.
Well, you know, independent of Reverend Duvall's resignation comes the news that the jail has no records of an inmate's death just a few years ago, you know, and a lawsuit's going on. And you say, how can you not have records of something like this? Well, we don't have
And it was very dismissive.
Oh, Doug Moore, Sam Page's spokesperson, an old colleague of mine, was, that was several years ago. So.
How can you not? I would ask the exact
Yeah, well, especially for the same reason that you would need to come up with it because you're getting sued. I think I would have every
That would
record.
be helpful.
That would be that would be helpful. And this is I don't mean to be snarky, but you know, sometimes screeds are often, you know, accompanied by misspelling people's names, and he had Sam Page's last name spelled wrong on the original one. Well, and I pointed out, saying, hey, you might want to fix the name.
Reverend
right?
Duvall has been an activist in this town for a long time, and he announced on my show, at least he claims that he's going to pass the mantle of activism on to others. I think he has a lot to be proud of. And again, I don't know the particulars of what he's concerned about, and he particularly called out County Councilor Beth Orwick for a lack of transparency, and he ain't the first person to do that. So I think it's at least worth. I think the audit that they've talked about, that he was concerned about, is coming out pretty soon, and maybe it'll show great things.
He says it will because they've written it in a way where they can't dig into any of the stuff that needs to be looked at. There's the whole problem.
I think he gave us a little tip off when he said, like, I think there's some positive news in there.
That audit will be fine.
And on Wednesday night, that was like the federal court spokesman coming like, I think there's going to be some like news tomorrow morning and about whatever. I think you know something, but that's all right.
Coming. Yep.
All right, the people who, I don't know if they know anything or not, who's running Trudy Bush Valentine's, campaign? So she was going to have an NRA fundraiser in the fall. That was canceled, and, you got both ways, kind of like, well, why did you cancel it if you want them to support you? And then you change your mind after the things that have gone on over the last, 2.5 weeks. Wendy, where's the campaign at, and can you stand behind?
I think that she might want to get a little bit of fresh, new blood in her campaign in terms of her direction, because she did pick up quite a few 20th century Democratic St. Louis endorsements today, and that is certainly good news. But the NRA situation, Grant's Farm, and the way, she has several siblings. She has several half-siblings. So I don't hold her accountable for that. She had to know the optics even before Uvalde were not good. And, on the heels of the veiled prophet situation, she's got to have somebody who is thinking strategically and, looking at the past and trying to get ahead of it. But I don't blame her for the NRA fundraiser at Grant's Farm, because I think a lot of organizations, really worthwhile organizations, use Grant's Farm. And who knows? The story I read didn't point fingers as to who had actually given permission or organized. Did it?
I think one of her brothers did.
That's what, yeah.
Yeah.
And she can't be held responsible for their political pedigree.
No, but you would think that her family would be savvy enough to go, if you're running for the nomination as a Democrat, you don't want the NRA involved in it. I think her bigger problem, though, is that a story in the Riverfront Times a week or so ago is that she's not going out and talking to groups. The groups have asked her, to come to the forum or a debate, and she's has been hesitant to do that. And that'd be a greater problem for her.
Yeah, that's true, too.
Yeah, I think she kind of expected maybe to be coronated, at least on the Democratic primary, and that's so clearly not happening. It does feel like there's some really cheap shots. Like, there's been some national coverage referring to Grant's Farm as her plantation. Like, the Bush family acquired this in the 20th century. Like, there are some fair shots on this woman, and it seems like there's also some unfair shots.
Very true.
She's got a great resume, a nurse. And,
she does, and devoted.
Yeah.
And I think at this point, the Democrat, I happen to have said on this show, I think Lucas Kunce is an interesting, different kind of populist Democrat. But I'm not, to me, the Democrats have to sort this out. It's 2 months to the day that the primary is taking place. And the important thing to remember on this story and on the Republican side is the real election that matters is in November, when this kind of story will be meaningless then. It won't. I agree with what's said. It looks a little awkward in a primary, but whether it's on the Republican side or Democratic side, this is that 2-month period where they battle it out on issues that, regardless of which party it is, kind of don't matter on the big race.
Okay, now I've said this before, that I think, on the Republican side, if you want to stop Eric Greitens, one of the big three has got to drop out. Okay, should she drop out?
Who?
No.
Trudy?
She just got in.
No, she was a late.
She just got in because the Democratic establishment, whatever you call it, the mainstream Democratic Party does not want Lucas Kunce. I don't think there's any question about that. And not that he hasn't picked up some endorsements and some stuff, and his have been at least from the 21st century. But in fairness, she's gotten some. She had Emmanuel Cleaver.
It's early for her.
She's had some serious
But
endorsements.
it's early for her.
She had Emmanuel Cleaver.
You said Emmanuel Cleaver,
Yeah,
Lyda Cruz,
Bob Holden.
Dick Gephardt.
Yeah,
Right. Okay. Yeah. That is so. When I used to work in Michigan, right?
But Alvin, there are not that many
who are you
Democrats
gonna
in
get?
Missouri.
She's not going to.
Good point.
All right,
that's-
good point.
So
Good.
I don't think her endorsements are that bad. I think he's gotten a bunch of them as well. But the issue is, and there was a poll that indicated it was at KMOV or one of them that had indicated it was wider. It was way wide open in terms of the two two of them. And we got to also always remember this election isn't going to be decided in St. Louis. It's a statewide election. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. I think if Eric Greitens is the candidate they're running against, both of them have a chance to win.
She's very likable.
Yeah, I don't think
she has an
She
opportunity.
absolutely is.
When she
I
has an
honestly wish
opportunity.
she had declared she was going to run a year ago.
Yeah, and she might be a really good candidate.
All right, you mentioned Eric Greitens. I'm going to go back to you, Ray.
Okay.
All right, Eric Greitens, Vicky Hartzler, Eric Schmidt, they skipped the Republican debate in Springfield, which is like a Reaganomics kind of thing where we don't insult each other. I would have insulted all of them for not being there, which I guess the candidates did do. But does this hurt any of them? And then you got an interesting aspect as to who the moderator was.
Well, yeah, it wasn't me. It was Kansas City Star. And I don't know why it didn't get picked up here, but it's irrelevant, I guess. In the Kansas City Star, in Kansas City, there is a scandal that has a special prosecutor. And it is because Eric Greitens used apparently on-duty police officers
cruiser.
on he did a ride, what do they call it? A ride along with them, and used it in a campaign commercial. And there is question as to whether the officers in there, one of whom the Star's reported is the son of a council person there, I believe, might have violated laws by participating. And so there's a special prosecutor who's looking into this. Now, Eric Greitens is not the target, but the special prosecutor is looking into it. Well, that person happened to be the moderator of the Senate debate, in Springfield. I mean, who knew? You kind of have to give Greitens a pass for going to that one. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And the story got more national attention. Again, I don't.
Greitens should have gone, though. It was a chance to curry favor.
Right.
I agree. If somebody's prosecuting me, I'm not going to stand him up.
It's sort of one of those you can't make this up stories. No.
I mean, it's true.
That's right. You can't make it up.
You're counting on charm if you don't have any. What do you do?
But it's the same thing on the Republicans. I was just saying, what an interesting pivot it's going to be for those folks, because they have had a bloodbath of a primary. I mean, there's no question. I don't think anybody's dropping out within the next 2 months. And at this point, it's almost too late to matter anyway. Even if they did drop out, it's not like their people automatically go. I think it'll be really interesting to see how a Schmidt or how a Hartzler can possibly pivot to saying they're voting for Eric Greitens after the things that have been said. But I guess stranger things have happened.
She's already said that she wouldn't.
Yeah, Hartzler said she would not.
Let's see what she says on August 3rd. That's the only question. But we'll see. She might win.
She might win because he had already participated in debates in Springfield. That was his.
That was right. And then Vicky Hartzler was at a fundraiser with Josh Hawley.
Who endorsed her.
And just based on things he said, can't stand Eric Greitens, and as Bill said.
Bill's explained that.
Right, Bill has explained
Thank you.
You can't have.
MAGA.
Yeah.
One MAGA big dog per state.
Wait, why is no one talking about Mark McCloskey? He too is running.
This is true. That's a good point. And he was there. He looked kind of lonely.
He is.
On the day of
He just hasn't caught fire.
Yeah, I think
he needs another crowd to walk past the mansion.
That would do it.
He really does.
He'd probably just open fire this time. Like, hey, give me some votes.
God forbid.
All right, Bill, real quick. Down in the Lake of the Ozarks area, down around Camden, crime just out of control. People are down there because, COVID-free, no mask, no nothing during the height of the pandemic. But now the police are kind of overrun with crime, and they're complaining. Maybe they'd like to come to St. Louis and work.
Right. I think that story is overblown. I mean, it's one of those summer stories you're looking for, and hey, crime is up there, but it's not a lot of murders. It's a lot of drugs, and business has been booming for them ever since they had those pool parties. In the midst of COVID, and everybody said, "Hey, this is the place to go party." Business is good, and when business is good, crime often follows along. So, and of course, I get calls from friends from out of state all the time who watch Ozark. And say, is it really like that?
Yeah.
So things are good in Ozark, and I don't put a lot of credence to the crime problem.
I like that. Business is booming, crime follows. A man is from Chicago.
Well, in Chicago, crime booms and then business follows.
What you got to say, man?
No, they're one and the same. No, I agree with you. I mean, I think that they're mostly, it sounds like they're just little
Drunks.
drunks.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Not to put too fine a point on it, but yes, maybe they're intoxicated and they get rough with each other or what have you. But no, I don't think.
But I want to know, you know, Ozark, it brings all these people to want to go visit Lake of the Ozarks. So is money laundering up? The Kansas City Star did not cover that angle.
pretty much.
No,
I'd
that's
like
a
to
good
point out
question.
at the RFT, when my boss's boss was just my boss, we gave this the proper title, which was Party COVID.
Yeah.
Which
Party
I
COVID.
thought was.
Do you remember those
we
photos?
did.
It looked like a stew.
It was unbelievable.
Well, and that's when
that
the rest of the
was-
country was frightened.
Frightened,
And,
yeah.
everybody was
And
being
everybody-
careful. But in the Ozarks,
We weren't even using sunscreen. Right?
Yeah.
No.
It wasn't as much publicity as we got for Ferguson, but it was about the next best thing. We had, the Missouri, not St. Louis, but Missouri was getting international coverage.
Yeah.
Remember
People
the early
moved there.
international coverage
Right.
for the apparent non-intelligence of people, however you want to describe it, partying. I mean, right at the beginning.
Yep.
I mean, it was
When things were closing
It was
down.
us and one little strip of things in Ron DeSantis' Florida. That was it. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Unbelievable. I will say this, that, okay, I'm kind of making fun, but police officers, they know domestic calls, little frivolous calls, that'll be the one where some absolute mayhem.
That's
You
true.
know, so
That is
I
very
think they are saying, like, you know, we are seeing a lot more nuisance stuff, but at the same time, every time, you know, I go my 1 out of 12, see the man, that who knows what's going on.
That's right.
At that, all right. No letters tonight, but if you want to write to us, send it to Donnybrook, care of 9 PBS, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. You can send us an email to donnybrook@9pbs.org. Tweet #DonnybrookSTL. You can also catch us at your favorite podcast spot, and we are there. Coming up next, Jeffrey Nussbaum, former senior speechwriter for President Joe Biden. He's also an author. He's got some fantastic things to say about the speeches you may not have ever heard. And we heard from Sarah Fenske this evening. Sarah Fenske, while you will not be at St. Louis Public Radio, you will be in St. Louis, and I'm going to put it out there that you are always welcome here. Okay?
Well, thank you. I'm going to hold you to that.
Hey, producer, I don't know if I was supposed to say that or not. Anyway, stay tuned for next up. We do appreciate you watching, and man, we will see your smiling faces live and in color at Donny Bash next week at the Sheldon. Have a great weekend. Enjoy Illinois 300 coming up.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9 PBS.